In the shadow of the temple, Obi-Wan Kenobi grew beneath Qui-Gon Jinn's watchful eye, his blade carved through air with the leaping energy of Ataru, the acrobatic form that demanded youth and stamina. Qui-Gon, revered master of the style, guided his Padawan in sweeping strikes, vaulting maneuvers, and relentless assaults. Obi-Wan's strength lay not in showy flourishes, but in direct slashes, cutting without wasted motion. Against opponents he would spin, dive, and strike, relying on speed where wisdom had not yet matured. His duel with Darth Maul on Naboo revealed his fire acrobatics carrying him where experience could not. Yet even in triumph, there lingered a shadow, for the form that gave him life demanded more than any warrior could endlessly offer. The duel on Naboo's melting pit turned the tide of destiny. Qui-Gon, older now, drove Maul back with every ounce of Ataru's strength. But the narrow chamber betrayed him. His sweep slowed, his breath faltered. Maul saw the gaps open, chest, weary guard, wide flourishes. In one ruthless thrust, the red blade pierced Qui-Gon through the torso. Obi-Wan's scream echoed against Durasteel walls as his master collapsed. The Padawan's fury unleashed a storm of attacks, reckless and desperate. He fought with everything Ataru gave him, rage fueling the clash. But as Maul pressed him, Obi-Wan felt what Qui-Gon had shown too late, the weakness of a form that left its wielder exposed when strength faded. Qui-Gon's death seared into him a vow never to trust such flaws again. In grief and reflection, Obi-Wan abandoned Ataru. The loss of his master became a lesson carved into his soul. He turned instead to Soresu, the third form of combat, tight, measured, defensive. Where Ataru demanded leaps, Soresu demanded patience. Its walls of defense offered no glory, but survival. Obi-Wan honed each movement until his guard became unbreakable. He vowed to create a hybrid, blending flashes of Ataru with the shield of Soresu, honoring Qui-Gon while closing the wounds left by the old style. By the Clone Wars' end, his mastery was complete. Even Mace Windu declared him the finest practitioner of Form 3. On Mustafar, this discipline carried him. Against Anakin's fury, Obi-Wan endured, his shield never breaking, until his fallen brother's reckless leap sealed the duel. The flames of Mustafar faded, but their scars did not. Obi-Wan, haunted, believed Anakin Skywalker consumed by fire and left for dead. Exile on Tatooine became his penance. Beneath twin suns, he mourned brother, student, and friend. Yet the galaxy shifted. Darth Vader lived, hidden in black armor, sustained by hatred. In the silence of his hut, Obi-Wan saw those last images again. Anakin kneeling before the Emperor, and Anakin burning on the lava bank. Padme's dying hope whispered in his mind. Could he have redeemed him? The question tortured him in endless nights. He guarded Luke, carrying guilt heavier than sand. His only purpose was to protect the boy, even as he wondered if his own failure had doomed the galaxy. One day, at Anchorhead's Toshi Station, the illusion shattered. Obi-Wan sat among moisture farmers, sipping water, listening to gossip that meant little to a hidden Jedi. The holonet flickered, reporting on fallen survivors of Kashyyyk. His heart clenched, mourning their blind defiance. Then came the image. A towering figure in black armor, mechanical and merciless. The name spoken froze him, Lord Vader. Obi-Wan stumbled to his feet, stunned, muttering it could not be. He staggered into the sun-swept street, the world spinning not from heat but revelation. Anakin had survived. His brother lived not as Skywalker, but as Vader, the Sith Lord. Dread consumed him. Had he been a fool to bring Luke here, to Anakin's very homeworld? The desert pressed in, and his hand gripped the hidden lightsaber, knowing the past was not done. Obi-Wan gripped his hidden lightsaber as dread consumed him. Thoughts tore through his mind. Had he driven Anakin further into darkness by leaving him broken on Mustafar? Could he face him again? Could he finish what he once could not? Should he warn Owen and Beru, or take Luke far from Tatooine, away from Anakin's shadow? Fear pressed down on him, smothering hope, until a voice broke through the storm. It was Qui-Gon, not heard by ear, but within the mind. Obi-Wan, the Anakin we knew is imprisoned by the dark side. Luke must not be told the truth until the time is right. Vader will never return to this world. Tatooine is pain to him, a wound he cannot face. The voice faded, and with it, Obi-Wan's terror ebbed. His duty to Luke stood firm. Trusting the Force, he steadied himself, determined once more to walk the narrow path laid before him. Within the ruins of the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan and Yoda recalibrated the beacon, warning survivors to stay away. Yet Obi-Wan could not let it rest. He needed to see to know who had brought such destruction. Yoda warned him only pain lay that way, but Obi-Wan insisted it was pain he had earned, and he would not hide. Activating the holoscan, the room of 1,000 fountains appeared before him. Younglings fled blaster fire, Padawans fought valiantly, then fell. A caped figure strode into view, cutting down Jedi with merciless precision. Obi-Wan's heart hardened, prepared to witness. But when the figure turned, when the face revealed itself, the weight crushed him. It was Anakin, friend, brother, apprentice, kneeling before a Lord of the Sith. Shutting down the image with trembling hands, Obi-Wan collapsed, blind with anguish. "I should have died before bringing him here," he whispered. Yoda's voice cut sharp. "No one made him fall. The choice was his." Obi-Wan's voice shook as he argued that Palpatine had already struck down the finest Jedi Mace Windu, Agen Kolar, Saesee Tiin, Kit Fisto. If even they had fallen, what hope did two survivors hold? Yoda admitted that together, they could not prevail. But apart divided, they might carve out a chance. The truth stung, but it was all that remained. Obi-Wan bowed his head, his body heavy with failure, yet his resolve remained. From that moment on, every choice was weighed, not for his own survival, but for Luke's future. He carried Qui-Gon's teachings like a fragile flame, guiding him through despair. Beyond the temple's ruin, war raged and darkness spread, but Obi-Wan clung to one certainty: he would endure, so that the boy might one day rise where he himself had fallen. Death released Obi-Wan into the vastness of the Force. No longer a drop in its ocean, he became the sea itself, unbound by space or time. He drifted to Endor, unseen yet present, watching as Luke surrendered into Vader's grasp. Luke pleaded, insisting that some remnant of Anakin still lived within the armor, but Vader's silence was a grave deeper than any tomb. To Obi-Wan, it seemed final. Anakin was gone, forever consumed. Yet Luke clung to hope. When father and son were brought before the Emperor, when duel was forced upon them, Obi-Wan's spirit whispered despair. He believed Luke unready, fear shadowing his every move. Victory, he thought, could only come by Vader's death. But as the battle turned, as Luke cast aside hatred and refused the darkness, Obi-Wan's certainty cracked. The boy's defiance shone brighter than any blade. Lightning poured from the Emperor's hands, searing Luke, breaking him upon the throne room floor. Obi-Wan's spirit reeled, convinced this was the end, that Vader would stand idle, a puppet bound to his master. He could not bear to watch another Skywalker fall. But then, impossibly, the darkness shifted. Vader moved. His gloved hand seized the Emperor, dragging him into the storm of his own lightning. Power arced and tore them both apart as he hurled his master into the abyss. Obi-Wan, stunned beyond words, realized in that moment the truth he had long denied. Anakin Skywalker had not been wholly lost. Where Obi-Wan had abandoned hope, Luke's faith endured. It was that faith which broke the chains. That faith which redeemed a father. In the thunder of the Emperor's fall, Obi-Wan finally saw what he had failed to believe: light could rise even from the deepest shadow. The throne room burned with the Emperor's final fury. Lightning crashed across father and son as Vader lifted his master, carrying him into the abyss. Darkness erupted in a storm of energy, and the galaxy trembled. Obi-Wan's spirit watched, stunned. The monster he had left broken on Mustafar had chosen sacrifice over servitude. Anakin Skywalker, consumed by hate for so long, had saved his child. Obi-Wan felt the weight of his own failure, where he had refused to believe in the faintest light. Luke had clung to hope. By denying the possibility of redemption, Obi-Wan had condemned both his friend and his own capacity for forgiveness. Yet Luke's faith had triumphed. As the Death Star crumbled, Obi-Wan withdrew into the netherworld, waiting. When Anakin's body failed in his son's arms, a voice rose in the void. "I am sorry," Obi-Wan answered, offering the way to immortality, not in judgment, but in friendship. Anakin called him master once more, and the bond long severed was restored in the silence of eternity. With the Republic gone and Padme dead, the Skywalker twins had been hidden away. Obi-Wan remained on Tatooine, guardian of Luke, carrying truth like a hidden blade. Years passed, and the boy grew, knowing nothing of the Jedi. His uncle spoke little, his curiosity met only with silence until Obi-Wan stepped into his life. To Luke, the old hermit was a door into forgotten history. Yet Obi-Wan's words carried shadows. He told only what he believed the boy could bear. Your father was a great Jedi, a warrior, and a friend. Darth Vader betrayed and murdered him. The facts were true, yet the bridge between them remained concealed. Ancient teaching had guided him. Such truths were trials, not to be revealed until one stood as a knight. In his solitude, Obi-Wan repeated to himself, the truth is often what we make of it. For Luke, truth would be a tool, not a wound. The burden of Anakin's fall would remain in silence until the Force decreed the time was right. From the netherworld, Obi-Wan's gaze returned to Luke as shadows gathered. Dressed in black, carrying himself with a gravity too familiar, the young man walked closer to darkness than any had seen. Obi-Wan felt the shock of recognition. The fire that once burned in Anakin flickered now in his son. Their passions, their sense of justice, the dangerous pull of attachment, Luke carried them all. On Dagobah, the end came swiftly. Yoda faded into the Force, leaving Luke stricken with grief. Obi-Wan hesitated, unwilling to intrude, yet knowing the moment demanded his presence. He appeared, and Luke's anguish burst forth. Why didn't you tell me? The old lie weighed heavy. Your father was seduced by the dark side. He ceased to be Anakin Skywalker and became Darth Vader. The good man who was your father was destroyed. What I told you was true from a certain point of view. The words felt brittle, even to him, but there was no turning back. The boy's path lay ahead, fraught with peril. Luke's eyes burned with questions, the same bright defiance Obi-Wan had once seen in his father. Darkness stirred beneath his calm exterior, surging against the light within him. Yet, unlike Anakin, Luke did not stand alone. He saw himself as a thread in the tapestry of the Force, not its master. Obi-Wan watched closely, weighing each word. He told the boy that destiny could not be escaped. He must face Vader again. Luke's answer cut deep. I can't kill my own father. Obi-Wan turned away, sorrow pressing heavy. Then the Emperor has already won. The truth lingered bitter on his tongue. But the Force whispered another revelation. The other he spoke of was your twin sister. Luke's shock radiated, yet recognition followed swiftly. Leia. Obi-Wan smiled faintly, urging him to bury his feelings deep. For in love lay danger, the very weapon the Emperor would seek to twist. American comic-style art of a towering, crumbling metaphorical wall made of intricately carved stone blocks, each block etched with symbols representing hidden secrets, silenced prophecies, and internal betrayals. The wall is collapsing inward. The wall is actively crumbling, dust and debris falling, revealing a void behind it, signifying the fall of the Jedi Council set against a desolate, twilight sky over the distant, ruined spires of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, with eerie, fading twilight, casting long, mournful shadows with subtle glimmers of moonlight hinting at the finality, a somber and desaturated color palette of dark grays, deep blues, and faded purples, with subtle highlights on the crumbling edges, a wide-angle, slightly elevated shot emphasizing the monumental scale of the collapsing metaphorical wall and the vastness of the ruins below, creating a sense of tragic inevitability. Highly detailed, intricate details, masterpiece. 8 kelvins. Enter 16:9 ratio. In the quiet of Dagobah's swamp, Obi-Wan appeared to Luke, the grief of Yoda's passing still heavy in the boy's heart. Luke turned sharply, anguish breaking in his voice. Why didn't you tell me? His words carried urgency and fear, a mirror of Anakin long ago. Obi-Wan steadied himself and answered, Your father was seduced by the dark side. He ceased to be Anakin Skywalker and became Darth Vader. The good man who was your father was destroyed. What I told you was true from a certain point of view. The phrase lingered like a wound. Beneath Luke's calm, Obi-Wan sensed a storm. Darkness and light warring within him. The boy's struggle was fierce, but his better nature still prevailed. Obi-Wan felt the weight of the lie, yet he could not turn from it now. Luke's voice cracked, repeating Obi-Wan's words back at him. From a certain point of view, it stung, as if Padme's echo had returned through her son. Obi-Wan saw in Luke's face the same high cheekbones and burning blue eyes of his father, and it maddened him. How like Anakin, he looked defiant and compassionate all at once. He tried to explain, recalling the day he first trained Anakin, amazed by his gifts yet blind to his flaws. When I first knew him, your father was already a great pilot. I thought I could train him as well as Yoda. I was wrong. Luke's reply stunned him. There is still good in him. Those words had been Padme's final belief, and now they lived again. Obi-Wan trembled before the weight of faith he no longer carried. Obi-Wan's voice grew heavy. He's more machine now than man twisted and evil. He knew Luke would not be convinced, yet the warning had to be spoken. Luke shook his head. I can't do it, Ben. Obi-Wan's reply felt distant, small in his own ears. You can't escape your destiny. You must face Darth Vader again. But Luke's words came with pain. I can't kill my own father. That was not the answer Obi-Wan had expected. He looked away, sorrow etched deep. Then the Emperor has already won. You were our only hope. But Luke spoke again, recalling Yoda's words. There is another. Silence pressed between them as the Force carried the truth through Obi-Wan's lips. The other he spoke of was your twin sister. Luke stiffened, his body betraying the shock before his voice could. The truth struck him raw, but recognition followed swiftly. Leia is my sister. Obi-Wan nodded with a faint smile. Your insight serves you well, but bury your feelings deep, Luke. They do you credit, but they could be made to serve the Emperor. The boy sat cross-legged beside him, his mind racing, his heart still reeling. Obi-Wan spoke of Palpatine's victory over Anakin, how the Sith Lord had twisted him without a battle. Luke listened, silent but intent, his face cloaked in the same hooded expression Obi-Wan had once seen on his father. The similarities chilled him, yet he saw also the difference. Luke's compassion remained unbroken, a strength that Anakin had never grasped. For all that darkness and light still wrestled within him, Luke carried something quieter in his spirit. Where Anakin had felt set apart, destined to triumph or fall alone, Luke understood himself as one thread in the fabric of the Force. He drew strength not in great torrents, but in careful sips, taking only what was needed. Obi-Wan realized then that Luke had inherited his father's best qualities without the curse of isolation. Neither Obi-Wan nor Vader had destroyed Anakin completely. The best of him lived on, in Luke and in Leia. As Obi-Wan smiled faintly, Luke caught the expression. What is it, Master? The old Jedi shook his head, still grinning softly. At last, he understood. This was the lesson the Force had kept from him all along, revealed now in the boy who would carry hope into the storm. The hangar was silent as Vader awaited, still as stone, yet rage boiled beneath his mask. Obi-Wan stepped forward, saber igniting with weary resolve. He had long known this day would come. Padme's last words echoed. There was still good in Anakin, but Obi-Wan looked only at the Sith before him. Darth, he called, unable to speak his true name, lest it break him. The clash erupted, blades sparking in the dark. Vader pressed with brutal strength, cybernetic arms hammering down. Obi-Wan staggered, old and tired, his reflection gleaming in the black of his enemy's helmet. He knew the fight was lost, yet he stood, driven not by victory, but by purpose. Across the bay, Luke's presence shimmered in the Force, a reminder of what mattered. Obi-Wan smiled, turned inward, and let go. Vader's blade fell, but Obi-Wan vanished, leaving only robes, his voice whispering to Luke, "Run." Within the Force, Obi-Wan's consciousness endured. Visions engulfed him, Padme's fading breath as she placed a child in his arms, Qui-Gon falling on Naboo, Anakin's eyes burning with corruption on Mustafar. Past, present, and future blurred together in an endless tide. He felt the weight of his failures, yet also the promise of Luke. On the landing bay, Vader's saber cut empty cloth, and Luke cried out in anguish. Obi-Wan saw it all from beyond, whispering words of guidance, shielding the boy as best he could. He had become more than a man, more than a warrior. He was the will of the Force, watching, enduring, unbroken even in death. Years earlier, on Naboo, another battle raged. Darth Maul drove both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to their limits, his strikes relentless, his contempt for them palpable. Pathetic, he thought, even as Qui-Gon fell beneath his blade. Obi-Wan's world shattered in an instant. Consumed by grief and fury, he launched himself at Maul with reckless abandon. Rage turned every strike into a storm, his safety forgotten. Around the abyss they battled, red against blue, but Maul's strength and frenzy began to overwhelm him. Obi-Wan faltered, body weakening, fear gnawing at his resolve. His master's lessons, whispered faintly in his mind, contain emotion. Pulled to the center, but sorrow threatened to drown him as Maul pressed for the kill. The duel turned against him. Maul's blade struck hard, and Obi-Wan was hurled back, his saber wrenched away, tumbling into the core's depths. Hanging desperately from a narrow outcrop, sweat burning his eyes, he saw the Sith looming above, savoring triumph. Sparks rained as Maul's blade carved the edge, taunting the young Jedi's fragile grip. But Obi-Wan's gaze was not on his foe. He turned inward, quieting the storm of rage and grief. In the stillness, he felt the Force embrace him. His heart steadied. His fear melted into clarity. The duel was not ended, his will was not broken. With sudden purpose, Obi-Wan surged upward, calling Qui-Gon's fallen saber into his hand. In a single motion, he vaulted from the pit, the Force carrying him faster than Maul could track. The Sith shifted his weapon too late. Obi-Wan's strike cut clean through his torso, splitting triumph into horror. Maul's body fell, but Obi-Wan did not rejoice. Breathing hard, grief and fury drained from him, leaving only exhaustion and sorrow. His master lay dead, and though the Sith was defeated, victory tasted like ash. This was the moment he understood the fire of rage could win battles, but only discipline and trust in the Force could sustain him. That truth would shape the rest of his path. Obi-Wan steadied his breath, heart hammering in the silence. He called the Force into him, steadying fear, silencing rage. From below the ledge, he surged upward, Qui-Gon's fallen saber leaping into his grasp. Time itself seemed to bend as he soared, faster than Maul could react. The Sith shifted his blade, too late. Blue light cut across crimson, and Maul's body split in disbelief. Triumph was fleeting, sorrow weighed heavier. His master lay dead, and though the enemy was vanquished, Obi-Wan felt no victory. What carried him was not vengeance, but the discipline to let the Force guide his final strike. That truth carved into him a path he would follow for the rest of his life. Years later, on Geonosis, Obi-Wan faced Count Dooku. He had already accepted he could not win alone, yet duty pressed him forward. His Form 3 guard, designed for defense, faltered under Makashi's elegance. Dooku's strikes were precise, his footwork unyielding, every parry laced with centuries of mastery. Obi-Wan's blade glanced aside, his efforts wasted against a style meant to dismantle offense itself. Fatigue clawed at him, breath ragged, as the Count pressed harder. A cut to his shoulder, another to his thigh, and the Jedi Knight fell. It was not lack of courage, but the clash of styles, a fencer against a wall unprepared. That day, Obi-Wan tasted bitter defeat, but also the lesson. Patience alone could not withstand precision honed to perfection. Though beaten, Obi-Wan endured. His survival became a testament to the truth. He carried victory was never certain, yet the fight must always be faced. Dooku's skill reminded him that mastery demanded balance, not only defense but awareness of every line, every weakness. Years would pass before Obi-Wan fully perfected Soresu, his shield against the storm. Until then, each wound he bore marked the cost of unfinished discipline. The Count had proven that even a Jedi committed to defense could be broken when forced into a game not his own. From that failure, Obi-Wan resolved never again to let the enemy dictate the terms of his survival. Death had not freed him from the Skywalker legacy. From the Netherworld, Obi-Wan watched Luke on Dagobah. The swamp clung to the boy's orange flight suit, determination burning in his eyes. Yoda tested him harshly, pushing him deeper into the Force. Obi-Wan whispered to Yoda in dreams, urging patience, reminding him this was not Anakin. Yet he also felt the old echoes, the same recklessness, the same dangerous compassion. When Luke rushed to save his friends, Obi-Wan despaired. He had seen it before, a Skywalker flinging himself into peril. He wanted to shield him, to intervene, but knew he could only warn. Destiny was Luke's to claim, not his to control. I had hoped that dying would free me, Obi-Wan thought, watching Luke's defiance. Yet here I am again, caught between Skywalkers and their choices. The swamp reeked of damp and rot, yet Luke pressed forward, unshaken. His passion, his fire, his will to save others, it mirrored Anakin too closely. Obi-Wan sighed within the current of the Force. He had failed to stop one, and now all he could do was guide another. This is a dangerous time, he told Luke, voice cutting through the fog. When you will be tempted by the dark side. Yoda's rasp echoed agreement, but Luke's face hardened. His friends needed him, and no warning could still his resolve. Obi-Wan felt the inevitable pull. Skywalkers never turned aside. Mist clung to the swamp as Luke loaded supplies into his X-Wing, his movements sharp, frantic. "I've got to help them," he shouted, voice echoing through the trees. Yoda's reply came low and weary. "You must not go." From the shadows, Obi-Wan's spirit emerged, watching as determination blazed in the boy's eyes. Anakin's eyes returned in his son. "You don't know that," Obi-Wan said dryly, but Luke did not flinch at his presence. His hair fell ragged over scars, his face set in stubborn fire. Obi-Wan felt old memories flood him, years on Tatooine, reliving mistakes, years fighting beside Anakin. Now that same recklessness stood before him again, but this was Luke, not his father. The choice was his, and Obi-Wan's task was to guide, not command. Luke spun toward them, his words cutting through the air. "But Han and Leia will die if I don't!" His voice cracked, fierce with desperation. Obi-Wan looked to Yoda, silently pleading for support, but the old master hunched further, cane sinking into the muck. "Even Yoda cannot see their fate," Obi-Wan warned. "I can help them," Luke argued. Obi-Wan's patience thinned. "You feel the Force, but you cannot control it." He remembered Anakin fumbling with the same truths, hesitant and uncertain. Luke, by contrast, spoke as if the Force bent to his will, a certainty that carried danger. Obi-Wan sighed within himself, reminded again how stubborn Skywalkers could be, wildfires that refused to be contained, even when the flames consumed all else. "This is a dangerous time for you," Obi-Wan said, voice low, almost pleading. "When you will be tempted by the dark side." Yoda suddenly straightened, seizing the moment. "Yes, yes." To Obi-Wan, "You listen. The cave, remember your failure." Luke's face hardened. "But I've learned so much since then." Obi-Wan's spirit ached. "Learned so much," Luke repeated, as though weeks of carrying Yoda on his back and enduring harsh lessons had made him a master. Obi-Wan wanted to shake him, to remind him of the trap awaiting. "You can't keep a promise if you're dead," he thought bitterly, but he could not say it. Instead, he warned with cold truth. "It is you and your abilities the Emperor wants. That is why your friends suffer." Luke's voice rose, sharp as a blade. "Then that is why I have to go." The swamp swallowed his words, but Obi-Wan heard only Anakin in them. Every argument, every stubborn defiance, it was the same fire reborn. He blinked, resisting despair. The Skywalkers never listened, never bent. Their passion could topple worlds, but also burn themselves alive. Obi-Wan met Luke's eyes. "You are our only hope," he said, though his voice felt distant, the truth bitter in his mouth. But Luke pressed further, speaking of Yoda's words. "There is another." The Force swelled, and Obi-Wan felt it compel him, pressing truth through his lips. "The other he spoke of was your twin sister." The revelation struck Luke silent. His body stiffened, then his voice came soft but sure. Leia is my sister." Obi-Wan allowed himself a faint smile. "Your insight serves you well, but bury your feelings deep. They do you credit, but they could be used against you." Luke sank to the ground, cross-legged, eyes lowered but thoughts racing. Obi-Wan felt the moment the last chance to guide him. He spoke of Palpatine's mastery, how he had twisted Anakin without a true fight. Luke listened intently, his hooded expression hauntingly familiar. Obi-Wan shivered, remembering the same look on Anakin. Yet Luke was different. His compassion burned steady, not reckless. For the first time, Obi-Wan glimpsed the truth. Hope lay not in what Anakin had been, but in what Luke could become. The swamp quaked as Luke mounted the ladder of his X-Wing. Desperation split Obi-Wan's voice. I don't want to lose you to the Emperor the way I lost. He stopped, unable to speak the word Anakin. Vader, he finished. Luke's eyes blazed Anakin's eyes. You won't, Luke said with quiet fire. Yoda, uncharacteristically sharp, warned, only a fully trained Jedi Knight will conquer Vader and the Emperor. If you end your training now, you will become an agent of evil. Obi-Wan echoed softly, patience and sacrifice. Luke's jaw tightened. Han and Leia. He turned away, his heart rooted too deep to abandon them. Obi-Wan whispered one last plea. If you choose to face Vader, you will do it alone. Luke pressed his forehead against the ladder, as if torn between worlds. For a heartbeat, Obi-Wan thought the warning had reached him. But then came the reply, I understand. He called to R2, ordering the converters alive. Luke! Obi-Wan cried again, but the words died in his throat. The language of the Jedi justice, sacrifice, restraint sounded hollow, brittle, even to him. Once, he had repeated them for Anakin, and they had failed. Once, he had spoken them as chains instead of truths. Now, facing Anakin's son, he felt the weight of every silence, every choice that had led them here. He whispered the only counsel left to him. Don't give in to hate. That leads to the dark side. Yoda added, strong is Vader. Mind what you have learned. Luke nodded once. I will, I promise. The cockpit closed, engines roared, and the boy was gone. The X-Wing lifted, swamp water spraying as trees bent under the blast. Obi-Wan and Yoda stood in the fading light, shadows long across the muck. Reckless is he, Yoda murmured. Now matters are worse. Obi-Wan's voice cracked with old despair. That boy is our last hope. Yoda turned his ancient gaze skyward, shaking his head. Number, there is another. Silence pressed between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Obi-Wan felt the echo of Leia, strong and luminous, hidden in plain sight. He thought of Anakin again, but pushed the memory down. The son had chosen his path, as the father once had. Obi-Wan wondered if destiny had ever truly belonged to the Jedi, or if it had always belonged to the Skywalkers. Obi-Wan's thoughts drifted backward, to years long before exile and death. He remembered Anakin as a boy, already older than most initiates, attachment carved deep into him by years of slavery and love for his mother. The Council had seen the danger, but Qui-Gon's dying wish bound Obi-Wan to the task. 3 years! He has been my Padawan, Obi-Wan once wrote. His powers grow beyond his teachers, yet his flaws remain. Patience eluded him. Justice burned too fiercely in him. He was outspoken, impulsive, competitive, arrogant. In him lay greatness and ruin, inseparable. Obi-Wan had guided him, but never truly understood him. Anakin was a mystery, one he tried to shape, yet never could. One night, beneath the smog-filled skies of Coruscant, Obi-Wan found Anakin gazing upward. Are you thinking of your mother? He asked gently, knowing the boy's thoughts often turned to Tatooine's twin sons. Anakin's answer cut deep. Number, I was thinking of yours. His tone carried no malice, only a strange edge Obi-Wan could not place. For a moment, their eyes locked, master and apprentice, bound yet divided. Obi-Wan felt the tension, the shadow of a truth he could not name. Anakin had been given to him as a duty, a promise to Qui-Gon. Yet each passing day made it clear. He was raising not only a Jedi, but a storm. And storms could not be contained forever. Obi-Wan had always known that Anakin carried his mother's memory like a hidden wound. Though he left Tatooine, part of him never truly departed. When news reached him of Anakin's slaughter of a Tusken tribe, the truth did not come from confession, but from whispers in the Force. Yoda sensed a shadow. Qui-Gon's spirit stirred, but Obi-Wan was left blind. Anakin told Padme, perhaps Palpatine, but never his master. For years, Obi-Wan carried doubt without knowledge, never realizing how far Anakin's rage had already carried him. Only in exile, wandering Tatooine's wastes, would the dreadful truth unveil itself, written not in words, but in blood. Early in his exile, Obi-Wan found ruins in the Junlin wastes. Bantha ribs rose like broken spears from the sand, remnants of Tusken huts. A chill clung to him there, a sorrow unspoken. He left quickly, unsettled by the sense of haunting. Later, caught between farmers and Tusken raiders, he learned more. From a leader named Ayark, he heard of a massacre 3 cycles past women, children, warriors, all cut down. Not by farmers, who orphaned but rarely slaughtered, but by a predator who walked on 2 legs. Obi-Wan felt a tremor of horror as the pieces assembled in his mind. He turned away, not ready to face the answer that hovered before him. 2 years later, the truth could no longer hide. Drawn again to the ruins, Obi-Wan felt sickness in the Force, a dread that gnawed at him. He walked into the camp, sand shifting over bones too small to be bantha remains. The ribbed arches bore dried blood, rawhide strips still dangling where captives had once hung. His breath caught. This was where Shmi Skywalker had died, and around her, every Tusken who had lived there had perished in vengeance. Obi-Wan's knees trembled. It was not only his senses, but certainty. This was Anakin's work. The apprentice he had raised, the brother he had trusted, had once turned slaughterer in the desert night. "Now you know," a voice whispered. Qui-Gon's spirit spoke, but Obi-Wan did not flinch. His grief had already shattered him. "Why did you never tell me?" he demanded. Qui-Gon's reply was calm. "You were not ready, Obi." Wan's anger rose. Anakin killed an entire tribe, women, children, and hid it. How could you still call him the chosen one? Qui-Gon's silence deepened the wound. He admitted only that Anakin had not kept the secret from all. Obi-Wan felt the truth. Press and Padme must have known, perhaps even Palpatine. And Owen Lars, suspicious and cold, must have discovered it as well. Suddenly, Obi-Wan understood Owen's mistrust. To him, Jedi meant blood spilled in vengeance. Obi-Wan sagged beneath the weight of revelation. His voice cracked with bitter despair. It doesn't matter who Anakin told. He was a Jedi, and he became a butcher. Qui-Gon answered, "Do not judge what you do not yet understand." The words cut deep, reopening old fractures. "What am I supposed to understand?" Obi-Wan demanded, frustration breaking his composure. That he slaughtered innocents? That he buried the truth from me? But Qui-Gon's voice only repeated, "You are still not ready." Obi-Wan clenched his fists, staring at the bones beneath the sand. His heart burned with grief, betrayal, and failure. For all his mastery, for all his devotion, he had never seen the darkness growing in the one he called brother. In 22 BBY, as the Separatist crisis deepened, Obi-Wan traveled to Anian with Luminara Unduli, their Padawans at their side. Anakin strode with youthful pride, his confidence shining as if tailored for him. Barasafi studied him closely, noting both arrogance and charm, a strange mix that set him apart. His laughter after victory, his pride when recalling Naboo, all painted a boy torn between brilliance and turbulence. Obi-Wan watched in silence, seeing again the contradictions he had lived with for a decade. Anakin was childlike yet mature, wild yet disciplined. And though he shone bright in the Force, Obi-Wan knew such fire could consume if left untamed. As the mission unfolded, tension surfaced between Barriss and Anakin, subtle but sharp. Luminara sensed it, likening Anakin to a wild river in need of control. Shocked by his late training, she asked Obi-Wan how such a boy could be molded. Obi-Wan confessed his doubts. Were it not for Qui-Gon's dying wish, I would not have taken him. Yet he spoke with both criticism and praise. Anakin was impetuous, impatient, but he endured trials few could survive. His skill with blade and starfighter grew with alarming speed. He hated politics, scorned history, yet still pressed on. Obi-Wan admitted the boy had matured, less complaint, more restraint, but within him turmoil still churned. Late one evening, Luminara pressed further. Why did Anakin bear so much unrest? Obi-Wan hesitated, then confessed. His Padawan feared never seeing his mother again. Luminara recoiled, aghast. Attachments were severed at birth for a reason. This one, she warned, could destroy him. Obi-Wan agreed, yet bound by his promise, he carried on. I do not know if he will ever be a knight, he said quietly. But I will do my best. If he rises, Qui-Gon's faith will be vindicated. Luminara studied him, hearing both weariness and hope in his voice. To guide Anakin was not just a duty, it was a vow, and Obi-Wan would endure it to the end. Years later, on the banks of Mustafar, Obi-Wan faced the end of that vow. Anakin lay broken, burning in firelight, his hatred still pouring from every word. Obi, Wan's saber humped, yet his hand refused to finish the strike. He had already told Yoda he could not kill him, but the truth ran deeper. In the novel's words and his own journals, Obi-Wan revealed it. He had once vowed to Qui-Gon that he would train the boy, protect him, believe in him. To strike now would be to destroy not only Anakin but his own faith. Above them, Palpatine's shuttle descended, time slipping away. Obi-Wan turned, leaving his brother to fate, heartbreaking with every step. Obi-Wan's restraint was not weakness but conflict incarnate. He was warrior and guardian, judge and brother, and the balance shattered within him. He saw in Anakin not only a Sith Lord, but the boy who had gazed at the stars, searching for his mother. He remembered his laughter, his victories, his defiance, and his fall. The fire consumed the man, but Obi-Wan could not snuff out the ember himself. He walked away, robes heavy, grief etched into every movement. From that day, guilt became his shadow, following him into exile, into silence, into the desert where he watched over Luke. For every step he took thereafter, Mustafar's flames burned in his memory. On Mustafar's black sands, Obi-Wan stood over the burning body of his fallen brother. Mercy would have been a single strike, yet he felt no mercy. Calmness settled instead, a clarity born of discipline. He knew he had no time to climb down, no strength left for another blow. And above all, he was still Obi-Wan Kenobi, still a Jedi Knight. Jedi did not murder the defenseless. Anakin's fate would rest in the will of the Force. So he turned, his robes heavy with sorrow, and walked away. Behind him, fire consumed the man once called Skywalker. Ahead lay exile, guilt, and silence that no victory could ever ease. Years later, in the solitude of Tatooine, Obi-Wan set down his reflections. My duel with Vader was savage. He was blind with fury, more intent on killing me than defending himself. When I left him, he was broken, burning. To kill him then might have been merciful, but I am a Jedi, not a murderer. To strike him down would have been to take one step along the same dark path he could not resist. Yet even as he wrote it, grief gnawed at him. By leaving Anakin alive, he feared he had failed again. The Sith Lord endured, rebuilt with wires and hatred. And so long as Vader and the Emperor lived, peace would remain a dream. Not all enemies stirred only hatred in Obi-Wan. His encounters with Asajj Ventress carved a different wound. Pale, fierce, twin sabers blazing, she came at him with venom. Yet Obi-Wan sensed something fragile beneath her fury. She was not like the Sith Lords, steeped in evil. She was a victim twisted by Dooku, a slave to anger and fear. Time after time, he tried to reason with her, even as she tried to end his life. In his heart, he compared her to Anakin, how easily their fates might have reversed had the Sith found the boy first. When Ventress finally fell, struck down by Anakin, she died in Obi-Wan's arms. And to his surprise, her last words were not curses, but warnings. In his journal, Obi-Wan mourned her. This morning, I found a desert flower vanished, consumed by some creature of the sands. I thought of Asajj. He remembered her pale face, her haunted eyes, her strength born of loneliness. She had once vowed to purge the Jedi, yet in her final breath she urged him to defend Coruscant from Dooku. Even in death, she admitted he might have been right about her. To Obi-Wan, it was proof that even the darkest past could hold a glimmer of light. He planted seeds in her memory, letting the desert itself carry her legacy. In that act of mourning, he honored not an enemy, but a soul lost too soon. The duel on Mustafar remained the most complex clash of the age. Offense against defense, student against master, unstoppable force against immovable shield. Anakin struck with Form 5's brutal offense, each blow fueled by rage. Obi-Wan answered with Soresu, the third form, perfected through endless practice. Every parry was precise, every step measured, his guard a wall no storm could break. Their knowledge of each other, every feint, every rhythm made the duel an endless mirror. Yet it was patience that won. Anakin leapt high, reckless, seeking victory in one stroke. Obi-Wan's blade found him mid-air, ending the fight. Soresu had triumphed, not with glory, but with endurance. Defense, not power, had decided destiny. Form 3, Soresu, was more than a stance to Obi-Wan. It was survival itself. Its calm, precise guard turned every storm into stillness. Against Anakin's brutal Form 5, the clash became a test of patience. Strike after strike, Vader's rage hammered down, yet Obi-Wan yielded ground with measured steps, blade ever steady. Where Anakin's fury boiled over, Obi-Wan's focus sharpened. The more his former apprentice pressed, the clearer his flaws became, openings born from anger, mistakes carved by pride. Obi-Wan climbed, seizing the high ground, knowing Anakin would never resist the reckless leap. When it came, the blue blade cut true. Victory was not strength, but endurance. Defense had defeated power on Mustafar's banks. Obi-Wan's triumph was hollow. He had mastered Soresu, perfected the shield, and proven patience unbreakable. Yet as Anakin burned, Obi-Wan felt only failure. To him, every motion of that duel had been inevitable, an unstoppable force meeting an immovable wall until destiny tore one apart. Soresu had given him victory, but it had also left him haunted. The form's calm could not silence grief. To walk away was to uphold the Jedi way, yet also to abandon the boy he had raised. Obi-Wan's mastery of defense had preserved his soul, but at the cost of his heart. Years later, aboard Grievous's flagship, Count Dooku revealed a different kind of conflict. As Palpatine watched from his throne, Dooku hesitated. The false plan demanded Obi-Wan's death, but the Sith Lord lingered. "Give him one chance," he urged. To Palpatine, it was weakness. To Dooku, it was logic. Obi-Wan was more than a foe. He was the student of Qui-Gon, Dooku's own Padawan. In that web of masters and apprentices, Dooku saw not an enemy but a legacy. He dreamed of an empire where Obi-Wan stood at his side, a Jedi of integrity lending legitimacy to their reign. Yet, sentiment had no place in Sith design. Palpatine sneered, reminding him that Obi-Wan was poisoned by Jedi doctrine, too old to bend. Palpatine's will was iron. Obi-Wan must die, he declared. For as long as he lived, Anakin could not be turned. Dooku's wish to spare him was dismissed as folly. Anakin was the chosen vessel, the future of the Sith, and Obi-Wan was the last thread binding him to the light. Dooku understood, though resentment flickered. He had ordered Obi-Wan's death before in the Geonosian arena, and he would do so again if commanded. Yet in his heart, he knew the truth. His desire to keep Obi-Wan alive was not strategy, but sentiment. And in the Sith's creed, sentiment was weakness. Thus the circle tightened. Obi-Wan, the unyielding shield of the Jedi, stood always between Skywalker and the Abyss. To his enemies he was an obstacle. To his friends he was a guardian. And to himself he was a man, forever torn between duty and love. He had not struck Anakin down, for mercy would have cost him his soul. He had endured every storm, wielding Soresu as both weapon and penance. The galaxy would remember him, not for his victories, but for his loyalty and his restraint. Obi-Wan Kenobi's story was never one of conquest. It was the tale of a man who endured, who held the line when all else fell, and whose legacy lived on in the hope he left behind.